Hey, your least favorite Christian here again with another video. Hey, let me just state right out of the gate that I am not advocating for the destruction or damage of any kind of holy buildings or property or anything like that. The Bible totally recognizes private property, and so do I. So I'm not saying to go out and damage anything, okay? But having said that, God hates holy buildings. That's right. I know that sounds strange, but you know what? You don't have to believe me either. As usual, I challenge you to go look at this stuff for yourself because it's totally in the black and white. It's all in the text, and really, I'm going to prove it to you here in just a few minutes. But still, I want you to see for yourself. You can probably just Google it, and it'll say all the same stuff because, like I say, it's in the black and white. And so, one of the things we're going to see, you start out here in the New Testament, and and in First Peter 2, God starts. He really compares us a lot to stones and rocks, and He calls Jesus here a living stone, precious in the sight of God. And then you also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house. So we're seeing this comparison of stones and buildings with us, the believers, being living stones and a sort of spiritual building. Here, even from the Old Testament, I lay in Zion a choice stone, a precious cornerstone. Jesus is a stone, right? How about the stone the builders rejected? Or a stone of stumbling. And you know, when Jesus called Simon Peter, he was making a pun there. Peter means stone. So he was saying, I'm the rock, you're the little rock, like the town, right? Okay, so again, he's setting up this kind of contrast that's throughout the Bible. Uh, and you can, like he did in our last lesson, you can see that, remember, we discovered this word actually means bow down. So, really, what this means is they worship, we don't. And we're seeing the same kind of thing here. They build with stones, we build with living stones. And one of the things that's happened is because we veered away from the way things were done there in the New Testament church, we've ended up with a big mess in modern day Christendom. Now, that's been going on for a long time, we'll see. But today, here on YouTube, you can see it's pretty much every day there's some kind of scandal involving Christendom, the churches. And it's really terrible when outsiders, non believers, look and see this. They can see what's going on, that there's something wrong here. And these, there are financial scandals, adultery, abuse, and on and on, anything you can think of going on, just apostate churches and everything. And that's probably come down from people veering off and this setting up churches in different than really what the way they are in the Bible. Going all the way back to the New Testament, uh, God first starts telling the Israelites, back to the Old Testament, tells the Israelites in Exodus and Leviticus that if they come across standing stones or pillars, sacred stones, to knock them down, to wipe them out. And here he's saying for sure, don't ever erect any here. This is in Deuteronomy. Don't set them up next to my altars or the Asherah poles. Don't set those up with my altars. So he literally hates standing stones. This is a perfect example. There's an altar made with cut stones, contrary to what he says. He says, when you build an altar to me, use uncut stones, not touched by iron. Why would he say that? To differentiate. And whatever you do, don't set up these pillars. And of course, you can see they are also cut stones. You know what? I'm just going to jump to the end real quick here, and then we can follow up into it. But why does God hate these buildings? Why is God so against this stuff? And there's a couple of reasons, really, multiple reasons, but the main one is, we're calling these things holy, and the fact is, God decides what's holy, right? When he came down to Abraham in the burning bush, he said, this is holy ground, and it was. But other people set up stones and buildings and stuff and say, this is a house of God, God's inside here and all that. And you know what? He's not. and he hates it when people go around calling places holy or objects holy, or or buildings. And so, another thing that happened was anytime you've got some kind of holy place, it becomes a source of problems, like the Holy Land, for example, or the Dome of the Rock, and or holy objects, like when he depicted Jesus as the bronze serpent in the desert. Later on, that had to be destroyed because people started worshiping it. And you can see that's what happens. It's like, this is the holy spork. Jesus ate with this spork. This is the holy. Bow down to the holy spork, everybody. And then you could say, I was healed by the holy spork. I touched the holy spork, and it healed my flatulence. And the other guys would say, well, praise the Lord for that. Tower of Babel. Again, even though it says Nimrod was building this, and he was trying to reach the sky, it's if you look at the Hebrew word there, it means heaven. And so, there's a spiritual component here. It's not just any building, it's spiritual buildings. And it's stated that they were rebelling against God. It was really him and his elites, that were tyrants over the people, and they enslaved the masses and had them building this giant structure for them, really. And it's just like today. You can see here's the European Parliament building designed to look like the Tower of Babel, symbol for rebellion against God. See how it's incomplete? Remember, this is Bruegel's painting here. Remember, the tower was incomplete because their languages were confused. The next building that gets destroyed that's a problem is Solomon's temple. God says, I don't really want a temple. What kind of building can you build for me? The earth is my footstool. And you know what? God was perfectly happy with that tent in Shiloh. That tent was parked in Shiloh for 400 years, and he was good with that. Why would he want his temple to be a tent? And again, we're seeing that contrast between temples and what we do. But he contracted Hiram Abiff to the first Freemason that we know of, I guess, to come over from Tyre and build the temple. And so he built a beautiful temple, and you can see it has those twin pillars there. That's a symbol of the builders. And they're still around, by the way. There you go. And so he allowed that temple to be destroyed. It ended up filled with pagan idols and all kinds of terrible stuff going on in there. When it was destroyed, remember Jesus said with the second temple, he said that, not one stone will be upon another. And that's literally what would happen, was because they would burn it, and all those gold would melt off the walls and everything and seep down all the way to the foundation. So they would have to rip that building apart all the way down to the foundation to get the gold. The scene from Apocalypto, my friend Mikey always says, people say, no, all religions are peaceful and they're all the same. And he always says, have you ever seen Apocalypto? And so really, these are the buildings down in South America. I've been to the pyramids in Mexico, and it's the same thing. These are not just big buildings. These have a spiritual component where they held ceremonies. And like in Solomon's temple, they end up burning babies and cutting people's hearts out and things like that in there. Hezekiah, I believe, said that it took 16 days when they decided to clean out the temple to get all that junk out of there that had accumulated over hundreds of years. The Mormon Tabernacle Temple just completed over there in Denver, I believe this one is. And this is some elaborate stuff. By the way, the Mormons are connected to Freemasonry. Joseph Smith was a Freemason. And you can see here, this is the beautiful temple in San Diego. And it has the twin pillars. That Robert Schuller's Crystal Cathedral, he was disgraced financially and lost the place. It's now owned by the Catholic Church. They've renovated it, $100 million or something like that. I mean, really, is that what Jesus wants done with his money? And again, this is set up unlike, and we'll talk about this next week, but, really, uh, it's a beautiful place. It's just, it doesn't look right, doesn't it? Here's La Familia Sagrada Iglesia Church in Barcelona, Spain. And I've seen it, like going by on the train. And then, like, one time I tried to go there and I got robbed on my way. I was walking, walking there and got robbed. Never made it. But if you look at that place, it is super creepy looking. It looks like where the alien would live or something, you know. And they've been building it for 200 years and they just finished like a week and a half ago. So again, is that what Jesus wants done with your 200 years worth of work? They got it built just in time for the end times, right? Dome of the Rock. Again, these holy sites, are the most fought over places on earth. And then this one has a rock involved and a beautiful building. And speaking of worshiping rocks, in Islam, there's another rock, the black stone, the Kaaba stone, here in Mecca. And so you're supposed to kiss that stone if you can after circling around. And really anything with the word black rock or black stone in the name is suspect, I have to say. So that's another occult symbol, along with the black cube. Another temple of sorts. This one's inside the United Nations building down in New York, right? And or in DC, is it in DC? I forgot now. And you see they have a giant black stone in there. That's to help you with your meditation, huh? That's another video. Here, another shot of the Kaaba, and you can see the twin pillars in the background. If you'll quit fighting me. Technology doesn't like cooperating, let's just say. Here is the Keptis mosaic, it's called. It's now been dismantled and reassembled in the Museum of the Bible in D.C. That is D.C. But it's named the Keptis mosaic because it memorializes the lady that donated the money to build the table, the beautiful table. And so we can see already here by, into the second century, late second century, early third century, this is 230 A.D. in Megiddo. They've already started building elaborate buildings. They call this a prayer house, apparently. But it kind of has an altar there going. Right around this same time, Christmas appears. And so we're going back to holy buildings and holy days and priests and such. And so it happened a long time ago. It's not a recent event. Another shot, kind of an altar-like thing. The table becomes an altar, really, is what happens. This is the Mason Temple in Memphis. And this is a Christian church, but they call it a temple. And the reason it's in the news because they're about to do a renovation on there, $1.5 million. And again, the idea of calling something a temple is antithetical to the idea that we are the temple. And so it takes away from that, We don't want temples. We're the temples. And you know what? I bet that has an altar in there. And sure enough, there you go. It's the same thing as the table in Megiddo. They build a table. It really becomes an altar. We don't have altars. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how is it you would turn back to the weak and worthless elemental things which you desire to be enslaved all over again? And again, it's back to this cultic religion. They want to go back to the cultic practices. All of a sudden, we've got priests and holy days and all that going on again, worship services, and that is not what the New Testament church was doing. And again, you can see where that's brought us, to an apostate church. And going to church does not make you a Christian any more than going to the garage makes you a car, is a saying by Lawrence J. Peter. Got to get over this whole going to church idea. And here's my saying: God no longer occupies buildings, he occupies people. Hey, catch you in the next video, part 2 from that other one. The Bible says don't worship, and we're going to examine what does the assembly actually do in the New Testament, right?